What happens when love is something you both crave and something you fear? When it feels like you're torn between wanting to disappear and wanting to be close. This is the experience of disorganized attachment. Disorganized attachment is the most complex and painful attachment conditioning there is. And here the child learns that the caregiver is both the source of comfort and the source of fear. And the way this comes about is that instead of learning that love is safe experience, here the relationship feel like they're unpredictable or even dangerous. Imagine trying to run toward safety only to realize that the caregiver, the person you're approaching, is also the source of fear. This creates a deep inner conflict, so the child may freeze or engage in behaviors that are contradictory and conflicted. This is where dissociative experiences come online. And the way this manifests in adults is a deep emotional shutdown. It's almost like there's an experience of simultaneous activation and shutdown. So the outwards expression may be relatively flat, yet the inner experience may be quite chaotic. And relationships may be really challenging when you're coming from disorganized attachment. And the way this shows up in adult relationships is that there's both this sense of intense vigilance and distrust, shutdown and activation, yet the outwards, the external presentation of this, the person may be flat, but their inner experience may be quite chaotic and intense. And people with disorganized attachment tend to have a hard time trusting other people. And if you suspect that you have disorganized attachment, you may notice these patterns. Fear of intimacy and abandonment at the same time. Difficulty trusting others, even when they're safe. There's no indication that they're dangerous. And then having explosive or unpredictable emotional reactions. It's almost like out of nowhere, you're overcome by emotions. And a lot of times it may seem like these feelings are coming from the past, not so much from the present. You may also experience dissociative or numbing experience, some version of not feeling real, not existing, or other things in the world not being real, almost like living in a simulation. And then also having an intense need for isolation, deep isolation, where it's not just hours of alone time, it could be days, weeks, or even months where you need to really withdraw. And then you may also find yourself in relationships that could be classified as unpredictable or chaotic. And this attachment pattern isn't so much about subtle behaviors or thoughts, it's really pushed into survival mode. So the attachment system is so activated, there's so much energy in the nervous system that you may find yourself largely in the fight, flight, or freeze experience most of the time, and you just think that that's normal, that's your baseline. And as a result, you never really settle. There's an intense hypervigilance, and trusting other people becomes very difficult. And disorganized attachment is rooted in attachment injuries, so unpredictability, neglect. It may be intense, it could also just be prolonged absence, not enough care. Alternatively, the caregiver may be sometimes loving and also sometimes frightening or even dangerous. In that case, it's very hard for the child to settle and make sense and come up with a reliable way to get the care they need. And the caregiver themselves may have their own unfinished emotional business, their own trauma, history of abuse, or other difficulties. They could be economic, social, cultural, immigration-related difficulties. And as a result, because the attachment system is so activated, the exploratory system is largely off. So people with disorganized attachment may occasionally string together enough regulation that they begin to be able to venture out and explore, yet largely their experience is just an attempt at survival to try to regulate enough to get through right now, through this day, and so on. And healing from disorganized attachment is possible, yet it requires a lot of safety, a lot of space and room for all these different behaviors, people that are really stable and predictable, that understand the need for withdrawal. One of the complicating factors with disorganization in relationship is that often the person with disorganized attachment will unknowingly or even purposefully test people, so to say, or basically create conditions or experiments where where they'll figure out, well, is this person trustworthy, without actually telling them what they want, how they want them to respond, because even that is too threatening. And then just see if they will act in a way or don't act in a certain way. And based on that, make an assumption or a conclusion that this person is unreliable. And for the most part, these tests largely fail. Most people don't even know that they're part of this engagement. And then disorganized people over time find themselves largely isolated. And when it comes to disorganized attachment, I'm a proponent on safety first, stabilizing first, because with disorganization, the distress level is so high. It's not even some distress, it's really pushed into fight or flight, freeze, fawn response. So really high energy activation. So really just to bring it down to a level that's more manageable. So, I'll often ask people where they're at on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest distress ever, 1 being perfectly settled. Somebody with disorganized attachment will just consistently as a baseline report being at a 7 or 8 day to day, which is really high. So if you can begin to get to 6, a 5, or below a 5, all of a sudden there's so much more energy to do other things and begin to actually work through some of the difficulties and process and eventually integrate. So you can just think of resolving disorganized attachment. The very first step is to begin to settle, to begin to emotionally regulate, to let the body relax and have some felt sense of safety, which is not an easy thing to do. And there's a kind of chicken and an egg challenge here with disorganized attachment. If you've never had a predictable, consistently safe caregiver or caregiving environment growing up, you don't really have a model then of what that even looks like, what it feels like. This is where the work I do in attachment repair, and specifically with the ideal parent figure protocol, is you can use your imagination, use imagery to generate the felt sense of what it would be like, what it would really feel like right now to have safe, predictable caregiving. And just briefly to go a bit deeper into the ideal parent figure protocol and on a much broader scale into attachment repair, with disorganized attachment, it's all about coming up with a felt sense of safety as a result of caregivers or imagining caregivers that are highly predictable and always safe. And this is largely tailored to each person. Some people want different things, and part of the beauty of this work is you can really shift what it is to you're coming up with, the kind of responses you're getting based on what you actually need each moment. And over time, as you stack the imagery, these sessions, you get a more internalized sense of security, of safety in the body and the mind. And as that fills up, it actually gets projected out. And this is the magic. The shift happens on the outside too, where all of a sudden people may appear safer, more friendly and reliable. And it's not that the world changes and that all of a sudden the world's actually that much safer, just that there's possibility, there's room to take in these new possibilities. And people with disorganized attachment, for the most part, without intervention, typically repeat the same chaotic, unpredictable, unsafe relationship patterns that they experience growing up. There's something called failure to detect danger. And oftentimes you talk to somebody coming from disorganized attachment and you listen to a story about a situation that they were in and chose to be in and could have left at any point. And, your jaw may drop where you're like, well, didn't you understand that this was an extremely dangerous or threatening situation and something terrible was going to happen? Why didn't you get out of there sooner? And this alarm bell doesn't really go off. The tolerance for danger is very high. So it's almost familiar to be in these dangerous situations. And as a result, that leads to recreating these relationships and finding yourself in environments that are not safe. So you want to begin to explore what safety is like in yourself, when it feels more safe, when it feels less safe. What do safe people look like? Are they emotionally consistent? Are they reliable, non-reactive? What does a safe environment look like and feel like to you? So this may be a novel experience, and it may not be so easy to tell what's more safe, what's more dangerous, and you really want to begin to explore this. And with disorganized attachment, typically people need additional support, somebody else to help them work through this attachment condition, because it's really extremely challenging to do it on your own. It's often a result of relational injury or the absence of supportive relationships. So you really need somebody who's safe and trained and understands what this attachment conditioning entails and how to work with you to get out of it and move towards earning security. And there's actually a pilot study and additional studies published on the attachment repair method using ideal parent figure protocol that shows virtually every participant in this study started with disorganized insecure attachment, and over the course of 1 to 3 years, every single participant moved to earning security. And for example, they no longer qualified for dissociative identity disorder, complex PTSD, and a slew of other disorders. So resolving the underlying attachment injury and earning security often leads to not just different functioning in the world, it also leads to the resolution of many of these underlying difficulties you may be experiencing. So if disorganized attachment and these descriptions are resonating to you and you may be thinking that this may be relevant, just remember some key points. So this conflicted feeling about relationships and love is not a flaw, it's actually an adaptive response learned from early childhood. And then that safety, that felt sense experience of predictability, is something that's inside of you that your nervous system needs to take in over time. And that earning security is possible. Even though it may not be easy or it may be challenging at times, it's totally worthwhile to even move from disorganized attachment to insecure organized attachment. That singular shift is massive. And then eventually, once you move to that, earning security becomes much more possible, much more realistic. So if you want more information and learn about what disorganized attachment is in a deeper way, we offer classes and workshops on the website. You can check it all out at mindfulattachmentcoaching.com. We also do one-on-one work like the ideal parent figure protocol and attachment repair, and you're more than welcome to reach out at any point. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.